assuming everyone can see my screen.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll touch base a little bit on the landscape and why managed attack response is very important. In fact, in some circles, a lot of security experts around the globe feel that managed attack response is a key component of your security practice. In fact, it's been said many times, besides myself, of course, that due to the threats that are around the globe, and as you can see on this chart, enormous amount of revenue, if you will, assets that are compromised and used as ransom, and occurs, every second around the globe. If you think about it, every 14 seconds is the estimated time, and of course, it's a $30 billion endeavor in 2023 are the estimates. And if you think about that for a second, as we all know, a lot of organizations tend not to report some of this just because they're afraid to hurt their brand. So that, in my estimates, it's even higher than that. So obviously there's certainly a need there. And this is a service that we provide and fulfill that gap in order to help protect those organizations that are under our watch. And of course, why does it exist? Because of the skill gap, if you think about it, and the complexity. Having a SOC that's available 24/7 around the clock, no matter what time or day or night it is in the global landscape, is an expensive endeavor. But more importantly, having the actual skills in that security operations center that know exactly what to do in the event that there is an incident, having that experience and moving quickly to minimize the risk. And then you clothe that with all the complexity of all the different types of security offerings that are out there. In fact, it's in managed attack response, because I think personally that MDR is a acronym that is loosely used in the marketplace because of the revenue opportunity that's out there. But as of today, there's well over, I believe the number is 500 to 600 MDR providers, so they say. But I'll get into that a little bit more here so you can understand the unique offering that we have and what makes us very different from a differentiated perspective. Of course, reducing alert fatigue, meaning that what typically happens in most organizations when they have some, whether it's an individual or a team that looks at all the alerts and responds to them, typically what happens is it gets very routine and mundane. And so typically what happens is they ignore them at some point because they think they're looking at the same alert. And so, those false positives and then really ignoring the truth positives, which is where we get in trouble. Also, managed attack response is starting to become in most cyber insurance organizations or circles, I would say, around the globe, is a mandatory option in order to even be underwritten from cyber insurance perspective. Also, I will show you a after action report that we provide as one of our reporting to show all the things we do in the event of an incident. And when we show that document to the insurance underwriters for cyber insurance, they're very, very impressed at the level of detail that we go to, as well as providing that skill set. And of course, compliance, we are GDPR, PCI, HIPAA, and I can go on and on. So we've got all that covered as well. So when you think of an offering, and as I mentioned, MDR is loosely used out in the marketplace, and the managed detect portion of the acronym is really tools and what those tools do. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of those tools that are available in the marketplace, as we all know. And trying to make them all work collectively together is one of the big challenges. And so our strategy was to do this with our native tools and utilizing the best technology that we have been able to develop over our last 22 years here at Bitdefender, which is Gravity Zone. And so that's our core competency when it comes to the managed detect portion of this offering. But then there's a human-led piece of it, which, of course, in our tooling, we have machine learning, we have a AI, but the human element here, what I call is HI, is still, even though we all know AI is, become leaps and bounds over the last several years, and it will continue to. But as of today, the human intelligence still rules. And an example of that is compromised credentials. The tools will not recognize compromised credentials until the adversary does something. And with a human intelligence, we can see that pretty quickly based on geographical location and other indicators that give us the insight that we have a possible breach. So from that perspective, and of course, Gartner has some nice comments there for our offering as well, because we work closely with Gartner and Forrester. In fact, we just ranked number one up in the Magic Quadrant, one of the leaders on the Magic Quadrant to the upper hand right as well. How does this all work? So I mentioned that we are building everything off of Gravity Zone. So Gravity Zone is the core competency here. So we take that already award-winning technology in Gravity Zone, which is our EDR, has a agent, and that agent that's already deployed out in that environment, we're utilizing the same agent. So we're not taxing the environment any more than it is already. And then, excuse me, we're pointing that telemetry to our SOC, and then that's where our managed detect response offering takes place. However, there is another layer that is available as an option. It is a la carte, so you can pick and choose these offerings depending on how they meet the needs of your specific client. So there's customization here without having to pay the additional cost of integrating all this into one platform. So that's a nice offering, such as cloud, for example. If we have a client that has that is utilizing GCP or Azure or AWS, for example, we can take in that telemetry as well into the SOC and have visibility to it before it actually gets to the endpoint. Same thing with the network sensor, ingesting the traffic from the network. So whenever there's an anomaly, we immediately know that something's wrong and we investigate it. And then with the collective effort, we determine if it is a bad guy or we're good to go. And so we do have the same ability to do that with identity, which is Active Directory, whether on-prem or in the cloud, and the same thing with Office 365. Our XDR offering, which is where those sensors are available for us to also ingest that into the Security Operations Center. And where we investigate these incidents, we try to look at every single thing that takes place. And then, of course, we'll respond to those, whether it's a non-threat or it is a threat. And then we will go through that triage to resolve and remediate as fast as possible. And then, of course, providing recommendations in a proactive manner, as well as in the event that something does take place. And then we clothe all that with threat hunting. And so threat hunting, if you think about, it's actually looking in the environment to see if you can apply anything of the techniques and tactics and procedures that the adversaries are using in current time, and then seeing if, what if, then what. And so we clothe that as well, and that's also part of the offering here. What does the soccer operations team look like? So when you think of a team, so I mentioned that we have a security operations center here in San Antonio, Texas. Is where I reside at. This is where we built the very first one for our company about 4 years ago. We do have a secondary one in Bucharest, Romania, which is our HQ. And then we also have security operation SOC analysts strategically located throughout the global landscape. And the reason we do that is one of the things we learned during COVID, having all these individuals in one room tended to be a problem, as we could all imagine. And so we diversified that and having multiple SOCs, which is something that we had in our growth plan. And of course, we're looking to expand that as well, even today as we continue to grow, because we do monitor thousands of customers in our security operations centers globally. And one of the other things that I want to point out why we built the SOC here in San Antonio initially, because we have access to in San Antonio, something that is maybe not too known globally, that it is the second largest cyber command community for the government, and all the ancillary companies that support from a cybersecurity perspective is based in San Antonio. NSA's here, Air Force Cyber Command Center's here, British intelligence is here, and I can go on and on. So what does that do for us? We get to tap into some of that talent, and we have. In fact, I'd say probably 60% of our SOC analysts, and this is a global statement, does have some military background when it comes to cybersecurity. Why is that important? Because if you think about it, these folks are the people that actually watch this 24/7. And if they've been trained and tasked to protect nation states, they certainly can do it at the commercial level with a lot more tools available to them than they had working for their said government. Also, the average experience in our security operations center across the globe is approximately 7 years. And why is that important? We're not watching these environments with a tier one SOC analyst. While we have a few of those, but most of our teams are built with a tier 3 lead, and then maybe a tier 3 or 2 on each team. And then we have multiple tier 2s, and then maybe 1 to 2 tier 1s on those teams. And we run those teams on a what we call a Panama shift. And why I'm bringing all this up is it's super important to realize that these are the people that are watching this, and we don't want them to be fatigued. We want them to be on their A game, so to speak, to make sure that they're providing the highest level of security for our clients. And those teams overlap each other. It's a follow the sun model. And the Panama shift works. They work a couple of days on for 12 hours, and then they're off for several days, and then that rotates, and it keeps them very fresh. Each team will consist of a cyber intelligence fusion cell, CIFC as we call them, which is a threat intelligence team. And so they're the ones that actually go out and scour the dark web, looking for what the techniques and tactics that the adversaries are up to, participating in underground forums, stuff out on the wild, and then taking that information, threat intelligence, if you will, and packaging it in ways that the security operations centers can utilize that information in real time to do what if, then what kind of scenarios. And then we also have a security account manager that works closely with the SOC. They're also on staff 24/7 or on call as well. And so that is the person that would be calling in the event there was an incident. So if we declare an incident in the security operations center, which would be meaning that something or someone's trying to penetrate the environment, then they would be that would merit a phone call, no matter what time of day or night it is. The advantage of talking to a human during a potential crisis is the fact that we get to move very quickly on both sides of the fence, so to speak, to make sure that we are doing everything in all of our power as a collaboration to minimize the impact and to eradicate the adversary, get rid of the bad guy. And then we clothe that with other ancillary coverage here with a defensive infrastructure team. Our DI team is responsible for making sure that all our tools are working, everything's calibrated and calculated, making sure that we have access to anything we need in order to make sure that the security operations centers are working 24/7. So kind of a N+1, N+2 strategy there. And then the last thing I'll touch base on here is the content management team. As you may or may not be aware, that we have a Bitdefender Labs in Bucharest and in the surrounding area that protects, there's a research and development at the end of the day. And I believe it's around 700 people strong, which PhDs around cybersecurity, acting professors, cyber scientists, a whole host of incredible, talented people that help build all of this over the last 22 years. And the reason that's important, so in the event that there is a 0-day attack, again, that means a threat that is not known, and making those adjustments with custom signatures, analytics, and building that into the tool, such as Gravity Zone, as well as the other tools we have. And we can do that as quickly as possible. And I've literally seen us do that in a matter of hours. Try doing that with another competitor that can move that quickly. And so that's one of the major advantages of having a dedicated content management team to the SOC across the world. And I've touched base a little bit on this, so I'm going to get on to the next slide. But really, the most important piece here or takeaway is understanding that you have this expertise available to monitor these environments, to respond, to triage, to investigate, and more importantly, to eradicate it quickly in real time. And then provide detailed reporting around everything that's taken place, not only when there is an incident, but just every day-to-day operations that take place. And if we have time, I'll show you what that looks like. Another thing that's important to note that onboarding is very easy to do, meaning that once Gravity Zone is deployed into the environment, as I mentioned, we're utilizing the agent that's already deployed and pointing that into the SOC. That's a matter of going into the Gravity Zone console, turning on a couple of modules. And once those modules are turned on within the SOC, that's going to indicate that the licenses have been applied, and then we would take in the telemetry into the SOC and we start to monitor the environment. So when you think about this, when this service starts on day 0 to day 30, is going to look very different than day 30 to 60 and then to 90 and so on, because we're taking in those security events into the SOC and we're starting to build what normal looks like with a lot of the tools that we have available in the SOC. Which I'll kind of touch base on in a moment. So very easy to deploy. One of the things that is very nice about onboarding, everything's done through an email, which goes to the MSP partner typically. The MSP partner does have an option to decide who actually receives that information. In most cases, it's through their team, and they work with us through the onboarding process. So let me take you through a quick incident response. What does that look like? How does this really work? I mentioned compromised credentials as one of the key things. So one of the things that we see, which is a very constant, is phishing campaigns, and they can be very successful depending on the individuals within an organization if they click on something, which does happen often, unfortunately. And so that's typically where we see compromised credentials take place because of a phishing campaign. Let's say an individual within an organization did do that and clicked on something that they weren't aware that was a phishing campaign. And then, of course, that compromised credentials is where that perpetrator will get that information, be able to log in, taking over that endpoint. Now, because of the tools we have built into this, such as a SIM and a SOAR, we're able to see that kind of activity. So let's say that individual is in a different country, the perpetrator, and they log in, get that information, and we're going to see the different IP address, so different geographical location. That's going to set off and trigger an alarm in the SOC to investigate. Then again, we may not know if that individual could be traveling. Maybe they are on PTO or on a business trip, so we have to monitor that behavior. So if they start to move laterally, this again, where the human intelligence comes into place, and no tool is going to see this typically, and then we react. And so that creates an investigation. We'll identify what the issue is, and then with our pre-approved actions, which I'll show you in a moment, gives us the ability to, in this case, we would actually isolate that host off the environment. So we remove the communication for the rest of the environment so it doesn't spread. Then, of course, at that point, a security account manager would make a phone call to the said contact, whoever's listed in the portal, to say, hey, this is something we need to do. More than likely, go reset all the passwords in the organization, do that immediately. So we can make sure that there wasn't any other phishing campaigns in that same environment. If we do have XDR implemented in that same scenario, we would be able to do that on the behalf of the clients. But if they don't have XDR implemented, which were those optional sensors I mentioned, then that responsibility will fall on to the MSP partner and the client. And then we'll eradicate that incident, because then we can use the tools within gravity zones, such as isolate the host, put them in a isolated sandbox, where we can do sandbox analytics and start to do the triage and try to figure out what happened. Typically what happens, as I mentioned, someone clicks on something, we determine that, and then we get that information and start to recommend that maybe the organization needs more training, et cetera. And then during that whole process, we'll provide a flash report within 30 minutes of an incident. That is just a quick one-page synopsis of what's taken place. So that way we can share that information with the client, because in a lot of cases, these happen at 3 a.m. in the morning, let's say. And when we're making that phone call, the individuals that we contact based on the contact list, they're typically sleeping, and so maybe they didn't write all this down. So they have this one flash report that they can share with their colleagues or any of the stakeholders to see what's happening and what we're doing and what we're working on. Once we go into what we call a 72-hour steady state of intent monitoring after we eradicate the incident, and we know that for 100% fact that we feel comfortable that the perpetrator is no longer in the environment, will provide an after action report. It's that report that I mentioned early on. When we show those reports to the cybersecurity or cyber insurance underwriters, they're very thoroughly impressed with the detail of information we provide. In fact, a lot of comments typically are, "You really do all that stuff?" And the answer is absolutely. Just to give you a quick review of what actually takes place, this is from a real customer, a workflow of over a 45-day period. We took in this particular environment over 3,500 alerts, and taken it through everything I just described, which resulted in just 5 cases for the MSP partner or the end user to go or be notified, whether it's something that we're asking them to go do, maybe hardening something, or maybe a patch that needs to be done, things of the recommendations we'll provide, or it could be notifications such as we see an individual in the environment and they downloaded an application that you probably should be aware of, or they're using a browser that's not necessarily cybersecurity friendly, so to speak, and so you should be aware of that. Notice 0 cases, meaning that there wasn't any incidents of compromise. And so this is just being proactive, and then things that we do on a regular basis. And then, of course, in that same process, we provided 3 hunts, meaning that our CIFC team, our Cyber Intelligence Fusion Cell, conducted 3 hunts based on maybe geographical location, maybe industry, vertical, et cetera, just to have this information available to them. So they're on the, being proactive versus reactive. I mentioned our Bitdefender Labs, something that probably most folks aren't aware of. Yes, I say folks, I live in Texas. So our Bitdefender Labs is, as I mentioned, is, 700-800 people strong, and we've been credited with decoding over 30 ransom codes. So think about that for just a second. We literally obtained the ransom code and we reverse engineered it. We've done 30 of those, and they're available free for anybody in the world. You don't have to be a Bitdefender client on our website, so you can download it and then it'll decrypt that particular attack. And we do that as a courtesy. This is the kind of work we do in that Bitdefender Labs. In fact, Bitdefender, our technology is OEM to over 180 security organizations. A lot of them are names that you would recognize that use Bitdefender under the covers, and then of course rebranding it with their organization. And because of that, we take in over, I believe the number is around 600 million endpoints that we monitor, because not only our clients, but as well as their clients that we take in. Why is that important? It gives us the ability to see what's really happening out in the wild. It gives us the ability to understand what the adversary is up to, what campaigns are they working on, what are the latest techniques and tactics that they're utilizing, what are the IOCs and IOAs that are, so that gives us a very wealth of knowledge that helps us when things trigger off globally or industry-wide, et cetera. I can spend a lot of time on threat hunting and what we provide there. I think you get a good gist of what I'm trying to say here, but most important piece here is that because we do this type of work behind the scenes, it gives the end user client, you, our partner, the ability to just really understand that this is being taken care of for you and you don't have to worry about it. So it gives you that calmness, knowing that somebody's actually watching the environment and they're doing it with a lot of intelligence behind it. So it's pretty impressive when you think about it from that perspective. I'm going to skip this here. This is just some, again, there is a portal that has all this information, which I'm going to show if I have enough time. Pranav, keep me honest there on the time, please. And so I can make sure that we see that. But this is, everything is going to be visible in the portal. So you have access to see everything we're doing on each environment. As an MSP, you would have the ability to see as a parent-child. So any clients that are under your umbrella, you'd have the ability to go see each one of them and in detailed information that relates to them. I mentioned our pre-approve actions. These are the actions that we have the ability to do in real time in the event that an incident takes place. If you think about it, let's say there is an attack again at say 3 a.m. in the morning where most people are sleeping, we'll be able to do these in real time, such as isolate a host or stop a process or block a IP, etc. By the way, each one of these is customizable in the portal, meaning that you can go in there and based on the client specifics and their environment, you will know not to do certain things. So like isolate the host, for example. Let's say they're an e-commerce platform and they have a couple of servers in that environment, whatever number they are. And if you take them offline, if you take one of them offline, it represents a very high dollar amount of revenue loss. Obviously, we don't want to do that. So just explain that we need to don't touch these, keep them online and then work around it. We certainly will do that. And you can do that for every one of these actions. Okay. I am going to shift gears here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I am going to go over to the portal and show you the quick visibility on how you can see all this stuff. So give me just 1 second. Let me shift gears here. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So this is the visibility to everything we're doing in the Security Operations Center. We're just using this as an example. This is a demo, so it's not live. Therefore, you don't see the graphs here populated with real data. But it gives us the ability to see, in this case, what OSs are in the environment. This works with Windows, Mac, Linux. It doesn't matter to us, so we're agnostic from that perspective. So all that information would be listed here. You can have lookbacks here of the last 24 hours, last 7 days, last 30 days. I'm going to move it to 30 days. And this gives us the ability to see for each particular environment how many licenses are issued, what's being used, what is active. Think about that for a moment. If it's active, that means they're online. If the device is turned off, then we're not going to see the telemetry. So this is just a quick synopsis of what we have visibility to, as well as what's important on this tab is the top impacted users. Obviously, if you have some users here that have lots of activity, maybe that merits a conversation around their security habits, and maybe they need some more training or a conversation. So that information is going to be all listed here, so you at a quick glance, if you will. If you want to dig down deeper, for example, if you want to look at all the investigations that have taken place in that particular organization, they would be listed here. Notice the severity here is no threat. So there's nothing that needs to be done because there's no recommendations. It's just something that we just investigated just to ensure that it is, a false positive. However, if it was critical or high, that is going to merit not only the notification through the tools, but it will be there'll be a phone call from the security account manager as well. And so that is going to be typically truth positive, meaning that something or someone is attacking the environment. And so that would be also listed here. And if you wanted to see what the case was about, you just click on that and it'll give you the information here. And you can see that for every single case that we do on the behalf of the client. All the hunts that we actually conducted in that 30-day period or the periods listed, because we do provide a report every 30 days if you want to see all this holistically, which I'll show you that in a moment. And if you wanted to see those hunts, you can see that this is the activity. I think this one's on some related to CVEs, and then investigating that just to make sure that we're good to go. As well as any response actions, if there was anything that we are asking the MSP partner or the end user, something that they need to do on their end because we don't have visibility to it. But we see some activity that would be here, as well as recommendations. I don't believe there's anything under these tabs since this is in a live environment. Tickets would be listed here. So any tickets that are generated by the client or the MSP or us, so that would be listed here. So we have documentation of requests and things that we're working on. The reporting. So this is where it's super important. So when you think of the reporting, we provide these monthly reports, and these monthly reports will show you all the activity that took place in the last 30 days. In this case, we took in 54.5K of telemetry into the SOC through this particular organization. It was down 2% from the previous month. There was a 1.4K of suspicious events that we looked into and investigated. Again, keep in mind that this is a demo, so a lot of zeros here. The most important piece is making sure there's 0 incidents, that nothing attacked us. Many times, just like any criminal activity, if they see the difficult trying to get into a particular environment because we have all these layers and they realize that we're doing this type of protection, they just move on to the next organization because it's much easier. And this is going to be too hard for them, and they're not interested in doing something that's difficult. They want to go there's too many of them out there. They're so easy to attack, and that's what they do. The criminal element is the criminal element, even in cybersecurity, is my point. All these graphs would be populated as well. And then, of course, you can see it's very detailed. This report is a great report to utilize to show the end user customer what activities taken place over the last 30 days, even though there wasn't an incident. So that's super important. Other reports that we have are, let's see here. This is the after action report. This is a report that I mentioned that once we do have an incident, we'll point out the key points of what took place, the summary, just a quick synopsis, all the details. As you can see, it's very detailed with timestamps. So you know exactly what we did. And if you or the client want to go back and review all this stuff, they have all the information, all the evidence, if you will, and forensics is all listed here. This is the report that if you show this to a cyber insurance underwriter, they're very thoroughly impressed that we actually provide all this. What actions were taken, what are recommendations, the IOCs that took place, our assessment, etc. So very detailed. Let me show you a flash report. I mentioned that we provide a report that's a one-pager in the event that there is an incident. This is the one that we will provide within 30 minutes. And so this is just a synopsis of what's taken place and what actions we're taking, and basically more to come because we're still in the middle of the investigation. All right, let me touch base on a couple of things that are pretty important here. So I mentioned the pre-approve actions. So I mentioned you can go in here and customize these. So let's look at the isolate host. You pull down this little tab here, and then you can enter your information here. So in this case, they're stating that they don't want us to block any servers that start with the nomenclature serve. So something simple enough, but it certainly does the task at hand. And you can do that for any one of these. Also, be aware that you can turn these off. I don't recommend, by default, they are turned all on, because if you think about it, if you turn that off, then you're basically taking that privilege or permission away from us in real time in the event we're under attack, and that's going to stop us from doing our jobs. The only time that I would see that you want to turn these off if you're going to do some maintenance in the environment, or if you're doing maybe some kind of testing, and then obviously you have the option to do so, but we don't recommend turning them off. I mentioned that the XDR sensors are optional. In this case, we're showing that the identity one is applicable here, meaning that it's deployed. And so it gives us the ability, this is like Active Directory, it gives us the ability to disable users or mark a user compromised and so forth. And we can do this in real time. Emergency contacts, these are the folks that we would call at, say, 3 a.m. in the morning in the event that there is an incident. So this is the who we would call. We do recommend that you have at least the very minimum 2. We prefer 3 individuals that actually can take action in the heat of the battle. Because if you think about it, we're under attack, and maybe there's something on the other side of the fence, so to speak, where we don't have the ability to make those changes where, as the MSP may have, or the end user customer. So we like to have someone that can actually work with us in real time to eradicate a perpetrator. We are under attack. It is all hands on deck. And this is, while we do a lot for you, the partner, and the client, there's still things that we won't have access to. And so that's pretty imperative that we have the ability to communicate that in real time to eradicate and minimize the impact. Let's see here. The last thing I'm going to show under companies, I mentioned as an MSP, you would have the ability to see all your companies. Again, since this isn't real live data, those companies would be listed down here. So you would be able to look at every single one of these dashboards for those said companies. And then, of course, the main dashboard would be an overview of all those companies, and you'll be able to go in there and to do that. And that is my presentation. Pranav?
Yeah, perfect, Paul. Really appreciate it. I think kind of covered a lot of ground. So Simon, do you want to kind of open the floor for Q&A, like whether they want to do it in Swedish or in English? Yeah.
Take it in Swedish then, because of the Swedish audience. Så av det vi har hört här i dagens webbinar, finns det några frågor, funderingar kopplat till det Paul har pratat om? Någonting som ni vill lyfta och diskutera vidare, så passa på att ställa frågor här när vi har specialisterna på plats. Annars så går det bra såklart att ta dem senare med oss, och vi kan ta dem vidare till Bitdefender. Så om det inte är någonting här och nu, så vill jag återigen också upplysa om det här presentkortet på 250 kronor som ni får vid bokad demo om det finns intresse. Men som sagt, vi kommer ju följa upp det med samtliga här inom de kommande dagarna. Stämma av. Så att ni kommer höra från oss, och om det som sagt inte finns några frågor så...
Det kom någon i chatten nu, en fråga.
Ja, det kom något i chatten. So there is a question, Paul, in the chat.
Yeah, so I can answer that question. So can you mix between the different bundles? So some users have Secure Plus and some users Extra. So yeah, it is possible. Yeah. And probably I'll show you a slide like what do you mean by those bundles? No.
Yes, please do, Pranav, so we can show them the different
Just
bundles.
Give me a minute. Give me a sec.
Priser och sånt kan ni även få av oss här efter webbinariet. Så kan vi dela den informationen om ni inte redan har fått det sedan tidigare av er kontaktperson på Gridheart. Men den informationen kommer ni få ta del av givetvis. Men se om Pranav får upp någonting här och nu.
Yeah, one thing that Pranav's putting that up and just sharing some information, some knowledge. We have seen a lot of activity in the last several months globally from the adversaries, and we, the crazy thing is we can't attribute it to anything in particular. Maybe it has something to do with the turmoil that we have globally, just from a adversary, or a couple of wars taking place, et cetera, things like that. These are all factors that take place, and we look at this as a global, because we have visibility to, when I say a lot, it is amazing the visibility of things that we can see. And so I just want to point out that right now, more than ever, and I've been doing this for a very, very long time, the activity of the adversaries, the bad guys, the criminals, is at its highest I've seen in a very long time. And we're getting incidents on the regular basis. And when I say incidents, that means something or someone's attacking environments that we're watching. And this is just for, we have thousands of customers here. I can only imagine what's taken place. And these are the ones we're watching. We have a lot more of them that have gravity zone, but we don't have managed tech response implemented for whatever reason. And we're, it is at the highest that I've seen in a very long time. So I just want to point that out, so you have that knowledge to use that information, as you see fit.
Ja, är det något annat, andra frågor som går bra att skriva i chatten också, givetvis. Annars så...
Jag hade en fråga.
Ja.
Om man skulle vilja testa Gravity Zone, har vi någon typ av som man kan skicka eller erbjuda de som är intresserade att testa den portalen i x antal dagar?
Ja, det går jättebra. Vi kan bjuda in till möjlighet för trial som man kan köra i 45 dagar. Då får man tillgång till flertalet av de här tjänsterna. Men låt oss ta den diskussionen i en demo, så kan vi visa lite grann hur Gravity Zone ser ut. Så är nog det enklast som ett första steg.
Bra, tack.
Bra fråga, tack. Ja, men vi rundar av här i så fall. I think Pranav, we don't have any other questions at the moment, but they can reach out to us at any time, our partners. So we will make sure to answer any questions as we get along.
And I think I'll also share you these the recent study that we did with Canalys. It was a research firm, and some of their outcome was on the lines of how MSPs are adopting the MDR and XDR. And I think there was some statistics which was 72% of the MSPs wants to offer XDR to their customers. So I'll share you that white paper as well, which I think would be useful for your audience. It's just looking at the in the global kind of research, so to speak. So it would be very useful as well.
Yeah, that's great. Tack så mycket samtliga för ert deltagande i dagens webbinar med Bitdefender. Och som sagt, vi kommer att höra av oss och följa upp med er. Och tveka inte att höra av er själva om det är någonting som ni funderar över eller har frågor om. Så finns vi här och stöttar. Både tekniskt och kopplat till sälj och priser och liknande. Men den informationen delar vi givetvis med er också här efteråt. Stort tack! Thank you, Pranav, and thank you, Paul, for the presentation. Really nice information. I think this is a really hot topic. So thank you very much. And yeah, that's it for today.
Perfect.
Thanks
Thank you, everyone.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.